What we see by way of response from the Islamic Republic against Israel for a strike that happened in Damascus, Syria, according to their version, on a consulate that resulted in 7 deaths of IRGC members, as well as a top general, a guy called Mohammed Zadi, who is the second most high-profile ranking IRGC member to have died since the assassination of Soleimani, who was the head of the Quds Force within the Trump administration. So what is the IRGC? So the IRGC was set up in 1979 after the Islamic Republic revolution that was led by a guy called Khomeini. They never trusted the army. They saw the army in Iran as being one of the same thing. So what they wanted to do is create their own security force, where the IRGC's sole mission and purpose is the preservation of the Islamic Republic. It has a personnel of around 190,000. It's the most highly equipped organization in terms of security within Iran. An offset of it is what's called the Quds Force. It does all of its international operations across the region. It has a personnel of around 20,000 active members. And the Quds Force are in Iraq, which is almost a de facto state within the Islamic Republic. They're responsible for the Houthis in Yemen. They were responsible for a lot of stuff that goes on with Hezbollah, which was founded by the Islamic Republic, and also with Hamas, which has a lot of its funds from the Islamic Republic, and in Syria, in terms of preserving Assad's reign within Syria. Assad relies on the Islamic Republic for 30% of his military in terms of keeping him in power, and 70% when it comes to Russia. So there was a lot of chit-chatter about a retaliation. The ambassador came out when the attack happened, the ambassador to Syria, saying there will be a harsh response. Khamenei was straight out of the blocks, the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic, to say that Israel will get a slap in the face. Then there was purported leaks from the CIA saying that a retaliation would happen in 48 hours and it would be direct from the Islamic Republic against Israel. So what's been happening before, there's been almost a shadow war between the Islamic Republic and that of Israel. So tit for tat, you'll see assassination of nuclear scientists within the Islamic Republic, etc., and also some proxies in terms of attacks, usually from Hezbollah and other such likes, but no direct attacks. A lot of the Islamic Republic, when they do a retaliation, is through their proxies in Iraq, in Syria, etc., against American bases, against US troops, but no direct confrontation with the likes of Israel. But this time round, it seemed to be different. There's a lot of expectation that the Islamic Republic will do something bigger than they've ever done before. Why? They're in tremendous trouble. They're in tremendous kind of issue and problems back home in terms of Iran, with a failing economy, hyperinflation, north of 60%, a complete legitimacy crisis, elections where only 14% of people voted in the likes of Tehran, the major capital of the country. So a legitimacy problem, an economic problem, and failing on so many yardsticks in terms of a governing entity. The fact is, the Islamic Republic has never got over the revolution. It's never actually been a proper government. It's been in a perpetual revolutionary state, which relies on chaos and mayhem, and also relies on the Palestinian cause as a cause they can purport and export in terms of it being the leader of the Muslim world. So when it comes to the pillars of the Islamic Republic, there are 3 pillars. Number 1, death to America. Number 2, death to Israel. And 3, the hijab. So after the initial reports of a retaliation within 48 hours that came and went, then we started to hear that the retaliation will be done through its proxies by commanders such as Bagheri, one of the senior IRGC commanders. And it will be the harshest that we've seen. Then it started to die down a bit and roll back in terms of retaliation talk with their Foreign Secretary Amir. Then there was these perceived ceasefire talks going on, where purported back-channel communications done via third countries like Oman and Switzerland. The Islamic Republic has said to the Biden administration, which they perceive as being weak and somewhat ambiguous in their support to Israel fully, that they won't retaliate and rein in their proxies if Israel does not invade Rafah, and also that it commits to a permanent ceasefire, because ultimately they want the survivability of Hamas. Because if Hamas survives, that's another main proxy, and they're worried what happens in the north with Hezbollah, which they have to guarantee in terms of being a jewel in the crown when it comes to their proxies. So much of the foreign policy is dictated by proxies. That's what they've done throughout these decades in terms of projecting power military-wise. So with that in mind, when it all collapsed in terms of the ceasefire talks, which at one point looked like it was on and then it was fully off, the Islamic Republic have had to revisit the equation. There's a lot of expectation now they need to do something. So much of their support base is in Lebanon, is in Gaza, is in Yemen, is in Syria and Iraq, and to their constituent, to their base, they need to be seen doing something, otherwise they're going to lose face. The Islamic Republic have a way of getting around things or making excuses for or hiding behind things or justifications or to latching on to stuff in terms of never fully confronting someone for the fear of regime collapse. So with that in mind, could we see a situation where the Islamic Republic go more bolder and bigger than before? Maybe. Because the reason is they think that Netanyahu is weaker than ever before because of the perceived global pressure of allies criticizing Israel, etc., maybe stopping arms sales from the United Kingdom to Israel. Then you've got all of these cases going on with South Africa, etc. Then you've got the leaks and also the discontent from Biden demanding an immediate ceasefire, saying that Rafah would be a mistake. So with that in mind, as well as all the global protests, it could be an opportune time for them to do bigger and bolder than they've done before. What could that look like? It could be a combination attack of drones and missiles from their proxies in Syria and in Iraq, as well as in Lebanon. I still don't think it will be a direct attack because the Islamic Republic is a sophisticated theocracy. They have a think tank and are very calculated in their response. What it can't be is what happened before with the response with Soleimani, where in effect, through third-party channels, they telegraphed their response and the US troops that moved out of the bases and they kind of hit nothing. And that's been the kind of modus operandi before in terms of hitting empty targets, farmlands, almost tokenism for the sake of acting and reacting. That can't be enough because the level of expectation has risen. And as we all know, expectations is the root to all disappointment. So it would be wanting a case where it's perceived that the risk versus the reward, that the reward outweighs the risk in terms of benefiting kind to the Islamic Republic, because their first priority is the preservation of the regime. But they also know where they're at in terms of this game of chess, that the ball is well and truly back in their court and they need to be doing something, otherwise there'll be a serious loss of face with their own support base. Because remember, since October the 7th, with the war between Israel and Hamas, 18 commanders within the IRGC have been killed without reply. And there comes to a point where you can only cry wolf for so many times, you can only have so many red lines before people stop listening altogether in terms of what you're saying and how you're coming across. When will it be done? I would say if it doesn't happen by Friday of this week, then the chances of any kind of response gets lower and lower because the regime has made a calculation that they just can't touch this hot potato. What's more likely? An actual response of some description, probably bigger and bolder than we've seen before. And if that happens, the regime has made the calculation, this is best for the regime's survivability and the best opportunity and time to do so in terms of projection of power, being a regional superpower, and also changing the narrative from a failing economy, hyperinflation, where wages don't mean anything, a complete legitimacy crisis, where 90% of Iranians just don't want the Islamic Republic anymore. So this regime thrives off chaos and mayhem, and therefore the chaos and mayhem may be perceived as something which would benefit the regime more than any risks of potential retaliation back from Israel. Do remember this as my final thought, that Khomeini did say when it came to the Iran-Iraq war, that war is a blessing.